She was lying on the cold, cracked pavement. Her breaths were shallow and uneven, almost fading into the night. The street was quiet, except for the occasional hum of a passing car. Streetlights flickered overhead, casting long shadows across her pale, bruised face. A man in grease-stained overalls knelt beside her. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted her head. He didn't know her name. He didn't know where she came from, but he couldn't leave her there. Not like this. He scanned the street. No one stopped. No one looked. He carried her carefully to his small garage, the only place he could think of where she might be safe, at least for the night. The garage smelled of oil and metal, cluttered with tools, spare parts, and half-finished repairs. He laid her down on a ragged blanket atop an old workbench. Her eyes fluttered weakly, barely opening, but he whispered gently to her, hoping she could hear. He checked her pulse repeatedly, each time letting out a small sigh of relief when it was still there. The first night was long. Every creak of the old garage door, every distant siren made him tense. He stayed beside her, speaking softly. Not to himself, not for anyone else, but as if his words could help her survive. Morning came, gray and quiet. He went to a small market nearby, gathering what little he could afford. Bread, some tea, scraps of food. He returned and fed her slowly, patiently. She didn't respond much, just small movements that told him she was still with him, still fighting. Days turned into weeks. He cleaned her wounds carefully, patched her torn clothes with leftover fabric. He spoke to her every day, as if she could understand everything. Slowly, she began to respond. A blink, a cough, a faint squeeze of his hand. Each small sign felt monumental. Neighbors started noticing. The mechanic, usually quiet and unnoticed, was always with her, feeding her, helping her recover. They whispered among themselves. They didn't know the details, only that he never asked for help, never complained. He had little, yet gave everything he could. Months passed. She grew stronger. Her movements became steadier, her voice soft but present. She began calling him her guardian, and although he shrugged at the title, he knew he had become more to her than just a man who helped. Weeks turned into months, and she began to regain more of herself. Her steps became steadier, though still cautious. Her voice, once a faint whisper, grew stronger. She would look up at him and speak in short sentences, asking for water or food, sometimes just a quiet word of acknowledgement. He responded with patience, never rushing, never showing frustration. Each small interaction felt like a milestone. Every time she smiled, however faintly, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had begun to understand that saving her was no longer just about survival. It had become a silent bond between them. The garage transformed into a small sanctuary. Tools and spare parts still cluttered the space, but there was now a corner cleared for her. A small blanket neatly folded, a bowl set aside for meals, and a chair by the workbench where she could sit while he worked. Outside, the neighborhood watched quietly. They noticed the mechanic's devotion, and whispers traveled down the streets. People speculated, some admired, some merely observed. Nobody interfered. They didn't need to. It was clear that he would not abandon her, no matter what. One evening, after a long day of repair work, he sat beside her. She had been silent for hours, simply observing him as he fixed a broken motor. He offered her a small piece of bread, and she took it without hesitation. Her eyes lingered on his face, a quiet recognition in them. The seasons changed. Summer heat gave way to cooler mornings, and yet his routine remained steady. Each day, he would bring her food, check her wounds, speak softly, and allow her the space to recover. No one had helped him, and he never asked. It was as if he had accepted this responsibility entirely on his own. Then one morning, a sound unlike any other broke the usual rhythm. The deep, steady rumble of engines approached from the distance. At first, he thought it was a single motorcycle, but the noise grew, multiplied, echoing down the street. He stepped outside. Hundreds of motorcycles lined the road. Riders in leather jackets, helmets tucked under their arms, looked toward him with expressions that were calm but commanding. He froze. He did not know why they had come or what they wanted. One of the bikers stepped forward. He removed his helmet, revealing a weathered face and steady eyes. "We've heard about what you've done," he said simply. "You saved her when no one else would. We came to see the man behind it." The mechanic tried to downplay it. "I didn't do anything special," he said. "It wasn't a big deal." But they did not listen. One by one, the bikers shared that they had heard whispers of his story. They had followed it quietly, learning about the man who had saved a girl and cared for her without expecting anything in return. Their presence was a silent acknowledgement, a statement that his actions had not gone unnoticed. She stood behind him, watching. She understood now, even more than before, the impact of what had been done for her. The man who had felt small, powerless, realized the truth. His quiet, consistent acts of care had created ripples far beyond the garage walls. The bikers stayed through the afternoon, but their presence was never overwhelming. They offered respect, solidarity, and quiet recognition. No money, no favors, just acknowledgement. And for the first time, he understood that even small acts could carry immense meaning when observed through the eyes of others. The bikers lined the street, their engines now silent. They stood in quiet formation, giving the mechanic space, yet their presence filled the air with a strange weight. He felt small under their gaze, unaccustomed to recognition. He wasn't a hero in his own mind. He had only done what he believed was necessary. One of the riders stepped closer. "You didn't just save her," he said softly. "You gave her life. You gave her hope. And that matters." The mechanic shook his head. "I just did what anyone would have done," he replied, though his voice lacked conviction. The girl stepped forward. Her eyes met his. There was a clarity there, a quiet understanding. She took a small step toward him and placed her hand on his arm. "You saved me," she said simply, "and you didn't ask for anything in return." The man felt a lump in his throat. He looked at her, then at the bikers surrounding them, and realized for the first time just how far his actions had reached. Quiet deeds, small and consistent, could change lives in ways he had never imagined. The bikers began to talk among themselves, sharing stories of compassion they had witnessed in their own lives. Yet, they kept returning to him, the mechanic who had acted without hesitation or thought of reward. His actions had become a quiet legend in the neighborhood, whispered and admired by many. She sat beside him on the edge of the workbench. They shared a simple meal together, bread, some tea, a quiet moment of normalcy amid extraordinary events. Outside, the bikers watched, silent but present, offering their acknowledgement without intrusion. Hours passed. The sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the street. The bikers mounted their motorcycles again, engines roaring to life, and slowly, they rode away. The quiet they left behind was not emptiness but a lingering presence of respect, a reminder of what had been witnessed. The mechanic returned to his routine. He cleaned the garage, repaired old engines, and set aside food for her. She was safe, recovering, growing stronger each day. Yet, he carried with him a new understanding, a recognition that kindness, even in quiet moments, resonates far beyond the immediate space. He looked around the garage. Tools hung neatly now, the workbench cleared for her comfort. The lingering smell of oil and metal no longer felt oppressive but familiar, comforting. Outside, the street was quiet once again, but the echo of what had occurred that day, the acknowledgement and respect, would remain far longer than any words could convey. Night fell. The girl slept, finally at peace. The mechanic sat nearby, watching her rise and fall with steady breathing. A sense of calm settled over him. For the first time, he realized that his consistent, quiet acts of care had not only saved a life but had reminded others of what it meant to care, truly care, without expectation. And in that quiet, he found something rare, a deep, unwavering peace. Night had settled fully over the quiet street. The garage was dimly lit, shadows stretching across the walls from the single hanging bulb. The girl slept soundly on the blanket, her breathing steady and calm. For the first time in months, she didn't stir in fear or pain. The mechanic sat on a worn stool beside her. His hands rested on his knees, stained with oil, his clothes carrying the day's sweat and labor. He stared at the faint lines of the workbench, at the tools he had used to repair more than just engines. He realized that what he had fixed was not machines. It was a life, a human soul, a future. Outside, the street was empty. The echo of the bikers' engines had long faded, leaving behind only a quiet sense of acknowledgement. They had come, seen, and left without ceremony. Yet their visit had shifted something within him. For the first time, he recognized the weight of small, consistent acts of care. Each meal brought, each wound cleaned, each word spoken in the quiet, had built far more than he had imagined. He thought about the weeks and months past, the long nights, the sleepless hours, the constant worry. None of it had been easy. None of it had been recognized at the time. And yet, here he was, a quiet witness to the growth of another human being. She had recovered, strengthened, and begun to trust again. She had learned that the world could hold kindness, even in its hidden corners. The garage smelled faintly of tea, bread, oil, and metal, a mixture that had become familiar, almost comforting. He realized that this place, small and unremarkable, had become a sanctuary, not just for her but for him as well. A space where quiet courage mattered more than recognition, where consistent care was its own reward. He watched her stir in her sleep for a moment, the faint rise and fall of her chest a reminder that she was alive, safe, and healing. And in that moment he understood something essential. Heroism was not measured by grand gestures or public praise. It was measured in the small choices, repeated over time, that allowed life and hope to persist. The night deepened, and a gentle calm settled over both of them. He remained seated, reflecting quietly, thinking of the street outside, the engines that had come and gone, the silent acknowledgement from strangers who had witnessed his care. All of it reinforced the same truth. The smallest acts, done without expectation, ripple far beyond what we can see. Finally, he rose and moved quietly about the garage, tidying what he could. He did not speak, did not hurry, did not force meaning into the quiet moments. He simply existed in them, carrying the weight of responsibility, relief, and a newfound understanding of the quiet power of compassion. As dawn approached, light began to filter through the small windows, soft and gentle. The girl slept still, and he remained at her side. For the first time, the mechanic felt complete. Not because of recognition or praise, but because he had chosen to act when no one else would, and that choice had made all the difference. Outside, the world continued unaware of the lives quietly changed within the small garage. But inside, a single life had been saved, a bond had been forged, and a man had discovered the profound weight and reward of simply caring. And in that quiet morning, with the first light touching the garage walls, he finally understood. Even in a world often indifferent, a single act of kindness can echo far beyond the moment, shaping lives, inspiring courage, and leaving a mark that no noise or attention could ever diminish. He sat back on the stool, hands resting on his knees, watching the girl sleep. The garage smelled of oil and bread, of work done and life preserved. And for